Thank you, everybody. We're in for a good night here. This is first of the so-called COVID conversations that I'm planning to have at Waunakee Public Library. And our program tonight has Kelly Strandemo, actor, singer, writer, and she's lived in many locales from Los Angeles to London, where she received a master's in classical acting from the London School of Music, Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. And she's lives in Brooklyn now, and she does many things. And she's a member of the Ducdame Ensemble and a founding member of that, as a matter of fact. And also a proud member of Actors Equity and Equity UK. Pardon my stumbling over everything here. We've seen Kelly in productions in New York when we visited, and I must say she's got so much energy, talent, and endurance. And she's going to talk about the endurance that she's had to have during this whole COVID pandemic. If you want to ask questions of Kelly, please use the chat, and at times I will interrupt and ask her the questions that you have asked. Otherwise, we can. She'll also have some photos to show, and we'll choose a good time for that. We're going to start out. I'll ask this question: what was a normal day for you, Kelly, before the pandemic?
Well, I think it's probably best to compare like this week last year versus this week this year. So the second week of July of 2019, I was rehearsing a new musical that was about to premiere in August. At the same time, as most actors, unless they are a television show regular or in a long-running Broadway show or a movie star, we're all freelancers essentially, and so we work other jobs while we're acting most of the time. So I'm lucky in that all of my jobs are in the entertainment industry, but I work often as an audition reader. So I'll go to a casting office, and the actor coming into audition will need someone to do the scene with. I'm hired to be the person that they come in and perform their scene with to audition for the team. So typically last year I would start a casting session at 10 a.m., be there till 1 or 2, depending on how long the team was going to be in the room. I would then either go to an audition myself or work with some of the coaching clients that I have, or working on assisting projects that I do with other actors. I would do that in that window between 1 to 2 o'clock and 4. I would go to rehearsal at 4, be there till 10. I would come home, work, catch up on emails, learn if I had anything to audition for the next day or the next coming days. I would prepare that, work on anything that we had new for the show that I was rehearsing, because I knew that the next day I would probably not have time before we went to rehearsal again. So we're working, working actors are typically working 12, sometimes 14-hour days consistently. It's something we train for in drama school. We worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week when I was in drama school as well. And it's a very physical job. So you do get conditioned to do it much like an athlete. But that's kind of the normal day of a working actor. Some people do restaurant jobs and then rehearsals and then auditions. Some people work on house staffs, work in box offices, but in between your acting gigs, you're typically doing something else as well. And sometimes, like I said, like I was doing last July, you're working things at the same time. So it's good it was a busy life. It was a busy life in July of 2019.
And what about now? How about the first day that you found out about the shutdown?
So yes, I was actually in the room in a casting session when the Broadway League decided to shut down Broadway. And that was on March 12th of this year. I was working as an audition reader, and there had been some rumblings that week. That was a Thursday. And, people had started to know that this was going to be a problem that had to be addressed. And a lot of people were calling for companies or productions to shut down. But the difference is when the Broadway League shuts down a production, or it shuts down Broadway, individual organizations can often claim their insurance, their catastrophe insurance. My roommate Joshua, who is a house manager, is also on this chat and might actually have more insight into that because he works as a house manager for a theater. But it makes it a lot easier for companies in and of themselves to do the shutdown. So Broadway shut down. Most of off-Broadway either shut down that night or that Friday or Saturday. I, however, went back to work on Friday. There were casting sessions that did not get canceled. And so I was there at, 10 o'clock, 10:30 the next day. Half of the office was gone. It was very much everyone washed their hands. We had hand sanitizer, but we had actors coming in and out because they'd already been scheduled. And the prevailing thought at that time was, we're going to shut down for a month, maybe two. And the workshops and the rehearsals that are scheduled for things that will open will likely continue. And that was clearly before we realized the severity of what we were dealing with.
Yes, it really hit New York. It was terrible. I mean, they handled it well, but that must have been really, really difficult.
For the first few weeks, it's someone who is typically very busy. The first couple weeks were kind of almost like, oh, all right, well, we have this reset and we need to make sure that everyone's safe. And this is a logical thing to do. And it seemed still possible. Everything seemed like this is just a temporary situation and it's very unfortunate, but we definitely need to keep the virus in check. And, we'll be back. And Broadway kind of was like, we'll be back around Easter, maybe June, And it wasn't until things started really, as Governor Cuomo says, we were at the peak of the mountain in April, that we as an industry realized it was going to be a very long time before we were able to get back to any sense of normality. Not even what it was, but what it will be is still something that we don't even quite understand, because there is no phase for theater. We have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, at least in New York. Movie theaters and theater, cinemas and theaters are not included in phase 4. So we don't know when this ends for us.
Oh my goodness.
We know it is at least January of 2021 because that's what the Broadway League has stated for Broadway. And most regional theaters are following suit. The Guthrie in Minneapolis is not going to reopen until March. I think Denver Center is pretty much has decided to take the whole season off. So it's affecting a lot of places, not just in New York, but all across the country.
Wow. Have any of your friends or any people actually left the city or changed plans in any way? I mean, because of the drastic measures?
Definitely, there's a contingent of people that left temporarily. They went to a friend's or a parent's somewhere where they had some more space. And then there are a couple of people I know that have, recently had to make the really hard decision to leave New York. I think that will be a factor continuing, because once again, it's not just the Broadway industry that is shut down, but all of the supporting industries as well. A lot of actors are waiters and are caterers, and those companies have been shut down. So a lot of the support systems have also gone away in this pandemic because all of our jobs are essentially customer relations jobs. We are relating face to face with people. And if those stay closed, then there will be people, especially considering that it doesn't look like the pandemic unemployment assistance plan is going to be in place past this month, that will not be able to afford to live here. Or, I mean, frankly, like, I don't know where they will afford to live in general, because they're going to be, you know, all of the skills that these performers and people have are in industries that don't exist at the moment.
Right. I have a question from one of the audience members, and want to know, so what are actors doing to survive? Are they getting unemployment?
Currently, at least in New York, I can say that freelancers were allowed into the unemployment plan as of March 27th. And so, once again, as most actors worked as freelancers, we may have not been qualified for unemployment prior to that, but the state government did say these are people that absolutely should be qualified for unemployment insurance in this pandemic. So yes, we have been able to get unemployment, and it's been, it is the saving grace. It is how we've survived. Once again, you know, it's not just our industry, it's also our survival jobs that have gone away. So it is truly the only way that a lot of people are making it right now. Actors Equity, my union, has put out a scheme in order to write our senators and congressmen and representatives of all sorts over all states to try and extend, to, you know, encourage our representatives to extend the pandemic unemployment assistance plan. It doesn't look like that's happening right now, so it will be a scary time for people after that. You know, this is an unemployment rate that we haven't seen since the Great Depression, so it is not something that we have a cognitive memory of as a society, since most people weren't alive at that time.
Do you think that there's a perception in a lot of places that acting isn't, you know, as much of a real job as other jobs, even though if you've ever done it yourself, you know that it's one of the hardest jobs ever to do. I mean, physically and every way.
Yeah, and I do think that's true. You know, I definitely am in a personal plan to eradicate that view.
Mm-hmm.
Acting definitely is a real job. You know, I have a master's degree in it. We train, and we're, you know, highly skilled professionals in order to be able to do what we do every day. But I understand in some ways why, especially in America, that perception has not been the case, because we live in this world of celebrity, you know, and I think that when you see the privilege that movie stars and television personalities and, you know, people who are getting paid millions of dollars an episode, and that's sort of what's in your frame of reference, or that's what you see because it's what's, you know, put out there, and people who are making lots of money on Netflix and all of the things that we've turned to in the pandemic in order to entertain ourselves, you know, all of the actors who put out those kind of things. I understand in some ways why you think like, well, all acting must be like that. You know, they have so much money, why would they need our help? But to be honest, you know, I would say at least 80+% of actors are much more akin to a factory worker, because we, you know, Graziella Danielle, who's a very famous and Tony Award-winning director, once said of a chorus line, she said, Michael Bennett at the end of a chorus line, the director and creator of a chorus line, gives the audience what they want, which is this glorious kick line, this quintessential Broadway scene where all of these dancers are in this beautiful chorus line and the audience applauds and it looks fantastic. And he did that. But what he meant by it was, to be on Broadway is to be in an assembly line. Now, it's a glorious assembly line. It's fantastic. But there are some regards of being an actor that are not glamorous. And, you know, a lot of us work for just above minimum wage on some projects. And so it takes a long time to get to be someone who is a series regular or, has the higher income bracket. Most of the people in my union are not represented by that category that the public typically thinks of when they think of an actor.
Well, I suppose there's been a lot of creative, movement on virtually because of this. I mean, perhaps there's been a lot coming on anyway, just with the technology. But have you seen a lot of extra creative endeavors on Zoom or on other, or just, recorded sessions?
Yes. I mean, I think people are looking for ways to not only be creative themselves, but to be of comfort, or at least, a sense of a safe place sometimes, or an open place to talk about the things that are happening, or to be a distraction from the things that are happening. I think of the movies in the 30s that were, Fred and Ginger in these lavish costumes, and while the Depression was going on. And there definitely is validity to that. And yes, there have been a lot of companies that have pivoted to Zoom or to Instagram Live or to, YouTube channels. We have this fantastic couple in the theater, Seth Rudetsky and James Wesley, that do this program called Stars in the House, which they have done literally since the weekend the pandemic began. And they do it as a fundraiser for the Actors Fund. And the Actors Fund is not just for actors. The Actors Fund is for stagehands and ushers and box office crew and backstage and dressers, and so many people that are in this industry that you might not even think of when you think of the theater. And there's been over 100 shows now. They do it every day. Yeah. So, and Broadway Tony Award winning actors and casts of television shows have gone on and done reunion shows because actors want to work. Yes. We love what we do. You couldn't do this for a long period of time under the flexibility, let's say, of being an actor and not love it and not want to be and not be passionate about it. So yes, I did a Zoom reading for the company that was formed specifically because of the pandemic. Then I have friends who are directors of companies that are typically live theater productions that have pivoted to doing things in like socially distanced ways and filming them. And because also the artistic institutions that we work for as actors, the regional theaters, all of the places that give us employment are also really hurting because they don't have any income right now. So anything that can be done to lend support to those organizations, I think, is a fantastic thing. It just has to be online now because we can't, we physically can't meet in person. Or I guess in some states you physically can, but maybe it's not the best decision for the spread of COVID.
Are you involved with any of those endeavors? I guess I don't really know what that Ducdame Ensemble is. Are you all getting together and trying to figure out plans for the future?
So Ducdame Ensemble is a company that was formed from my class at Lambda, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. And, we typically have taken classical pieces and modernized them or shown why they're still relevant. We have been in talks about what we can do. Obviously we are trained actors for theater. So that's our first love. We want to be on a stage, and we know that is a live theater has no substitution. There is something which is kind of dangerous now, I suppose, but there is something magical in the connection with people when you're breathing the same air and telling a story in front of them. And it's going to be different every night based on who's in the audience and how they respond. But we know that it's not safe right now to do that. So we are thinking of different ways to do that other than maybe just be on Zoom. I think a lot of us have experienced kind of Zoom fatigue, where it was so great at the beginning to have this method to connect with people, and it still is. I kind of can't imagine if this had happened 20 years ago. Even the ways that we can physically see people, and at least in some form, are so different than they were recently. But there's the thought of like outdoor theater. Will that come back? It was announced in the UK today that they're going to allow that. So it really is just going to depend on how compliant people are with the safety measures to get COVID under control, and when we can start to reimagine what theater will look like in a post-COVID environment. I do hang on to the fact that, you see pictures of 1918, 1919, the pandemic, that the flu that happened then, that was so fatal. And you see pictures of people in masks, and it looks very grim and bleak. And then you flash forward to 1921, 1922, and you see people dancing on tables in jazz clubs. So I hold on to that as a sense of hope that, somehow it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
I have a question for you that kind of relates to that. What about mental health services, especially right now for actors specifically?
The Actors Fund has once again, they've really stepped up in making things accessible for, like I said, not only actors, but anyone involved in the entertainment industry. I think that the positive thing that's happened in many ways in sitting in this COVID world is that we have reached out to people that maybe we haven't had conversations with. People tend to sort of get to be more open when they're socially distanced because they're on a screen. And it's, I've seen a lot more honesty about mental health, I feel like, than I had previously, because we are kind of all in the same, well, I heard it said this way, we're all in the same storm. We're in different boats, but we're all in the same storm. And, some people are hanging onto a life raft, and some people are in a cruise ship yacht type thing. So they're a little bit more secure, but we all are in the same storm. And so it does lead to a sense of community. And to be honest, I think that is the theater at its best, especially the New York theater, is an insanely tight-knit community. So that is a place where the two have sort of married, I suppose, where the being able to reach out to fellow performers or seeing other people around has been helpful.
Kelly, we're so grateful to you for this conversation. Maybe at this point, I know you have some clips to show us of New York.
Yeah, so I put together just a little 2-minute video segment that's going to kind of just show the juxtaposition of the past year. And I think, yeah, so I'll let that speak for itself. Yeah, okay, here we go.
Wow. Wow, that says a lot. The Black Lives Matter parade demonstration was, I should mention, on the street where Kelly lives. So she was
I
one.
was filmed from my front stoop. Yeah.
So I guess at this point, if there's any questions for Kelly or there are other words you want to say, Kelly, we'll just let people unmute and ask, or, you know, if that's good, if
Well,
that's good with you.
first, I would just like to thank everyone for listening. I appreciate your time, and hopefully I can pass this on as a takeaway is, once again, this isn't just affecting the higher tier industries in New York, Broadway, movies, you know, HBO series, all of those things. This is definitely affecting artists in your local communities. So if you have a local theater organization, especially the theaters that hire Actors Equity members, support them. And even if that's just letting them, you know, joining their mailing list, or tuning into a Zoom to let them know that you're supportive of the arts industries, I think that would be incredibly helpful and very much appreciated in this time.
That's a good idea, definitely. Any questions for Kelly?
It's like Harper Lee, I've said all I need to say.
Well, I guess we can call it a night then. Everybody, thank you for coming. I hear people saying this is great, and thanks in the chat here. And you know, this was the first of some COVID conversations that I have planned for Waunakee Public Library. And of course, I'll let you all know in future what the next ones are. But this was fantastic, very enlightening, very inspiring and hopeful too. So, and like Kelly says, we should support our own too. So you have to seek out those people in the community. Great.
Thank you all. Thank you.
You bet.
Mm-hmm.
If Kelly's going to hang on, we'll have a few words afterwards if you want to.
That'd be great.